Welcome to the Broken Graciously podcast, where we challenge the culture of brokenness by exchanging beauty for ashes holistically, with candid conversations, transparency, and practical tips. I'm your host, Tanisha B. Lester, lovingly known as Coach T. I'm a Master Certified Life and Business Coach, Certified Christian Coach, Certified Pastoral Counselor, and published author. I look forward to engaging with you in the comments as well as on IG. Follow me on IG at Tanisha B. Lester with the number 1. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Welcome to another episode of Broken Graciously, where we challenge the culture of brokenness holistically with candid conversations, transparency, and practical tips. This is Coach T. So this is episode 8, and today I want to delve into forgiveness. So this is probably going to be a 2-part topic. So I'll do the first part of it today, and then we'll tackle the rest of it next week. So today I want to deal with the forgiveness of others. So this is often a kind of sort of controversial topic because we mistake what forgiveness truly is. So, and I can say that from firsthand experience. So for me, forgiveness was always a difficult topic. It was a difficult act. It was just something that I was not, well, I'll say twofold. I wasn't kind of good at it, but then I also did it, but it was like conditional. So, in saying that I wasn't good at it, I say that because I found it difficult to continuously to forgive people over and over and over and over again. It seemed like the more you forgave someone, like the more that gave them carte blanche to just do something else. Because it seemed like it was a situation where you pardoned their behavior, and then in turn that person felt as though, oh, I'm good. I can just keep on going and doing what I do. So it was difficult in that sense for me to just sit in a place of forgiving people. So therefore I held grudges. Now on the converse side of that, of me forgiving, I would forgive. But again, like I always made that statement, and we've heard the statement time and time again, I forgive, but I ain't gonna forget. So, while I said I forgave him, I kind of held on to it because, at that point you expect them to do something else. And in expecting them to do something else, I guess, you kind of really don't forgive them. So it was that type of dichotomy for me. But going back to the to the grudges, I'm that person. I'm that person that would hold grudges with 2 hands and 2 feet. I don't care what you did, because remember, I said I'll forgive you, but I'm not going to forget. I don't care what you did. I was going to remind you about what you did. And I was going to hold it against you because now you've just done it again. So that holding on to grudges, I was probably very good at it. Like I said, I can hold on to a grudge with 2 hands and 2 feet. And I wasn't going to necessarily let up on that thing either, because I didn't want you or that person to feel like you got away with something, because that's what forgiveness felt like to me. Forgiveness felt like forgiveness and forgetting, let me put it that way, felt like it was okay for you. That gave you carte blanche, and I wasn't trying to give anybody that, because I had been through enough on any front. And I felt like, growing up, I was taught the golden rule: do unto others what you would have them do unto you. So if I did something to you, like, and I apologize, like I genuinely apologize. Like there was no caveat to it. There was no ulterior motive. Like none of that. But what I found in saying, okay, I forgive you to others, like there was always a caveat. There was always an ill motive. There was always a manipulative stance to it. So that led me to the stance I took on forgiveness. And I'm sure that somebody can relate to this. But then, growing up in a family of churchgoers and religious people, they'd always say, you're supposed to forgive, 70 times 7, da 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 da. And that's a long time if you think about it. Like that's a lot of times to be forgiving someone. But again, if you had the mindset and the thought process that I had, that just means you're gonna do something else. And I don't want to be the recipient of your something else, whatever that something else is. Because it feels like to me you're just doing it just because. You ever come across people that'll, just do stuff and then ask for forgiveness later, but they're gonna inevitably do it again just because? That's what that felt like for me. So fast forward to some years later, when I've had to change my outlook and my perspective on forgiving. The previous perspective was that forgiveness was for that person, right? I'm forgiving them. And you are forgiving them, just like scripture says, you forgive others so that you too can be forgiven for whatever sins or, acts that you've committed. But what I came to realize was that forgiveness really, truly, actually wasn't for the other person. And I know that kind of seems counterintuitive, but forgiveness literally is for the victim, not the victimizer. And I'm not saying that you should look at yourself as a victim. I'm not saying that by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to give clarity to who the forgiveness is for. So the forgiveness is for the person that the act was committed against. So when I came to that, I was like, but like that doesn't make sense. Like how make it make sense? How does forgiveness, e- me forgiving someone else, equate to it being for me? How does that work? But when I was able to tie it one to the scripture, that's how I was able to get more clarity for that. But then what I also came to understand was that when we look at forgiveness just on a whole, like there's so much that comes with that, because there's so many, like holding on to unforgiveness can lead to sickness, it can lead to guilt, it can lead to shame, it can lead to cancers. There's so many health related connections that can be made with the lack of forgiveness. But we don't always have that perspective because people don't share that perspective or talk about it from that perspective. Growing up as a kid, you're just told to forgive, and like that's it. Especially if it was an adult, like that was your responsibility. So for to think about it like that, it was just a different way to look at it. And the scripture is Colossians 3:13, bearing graciously with one another and willingly forgiving each other if one has a cause for complaint against another, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so should you forgive. That's one scripture. And then the other one, so it's for us to forgive, but It's just difficult. It's just difficult. And we need to change our perspective on it because we're doing more harm to ourselves in holding unforgiveness. That was the biggest piece that I came up with when I realized, okay, let's just sit and think about this rationally. Okay. Like, I had to have a conversation with myself. So I said to myself, and myself said, and then myself saying, I said, look here. Now, you holding on to all of this. You being mad, you're upset, you can feel it in your body because, that unforgiveness, that tension and all of that, it manifests in your body. You going through all of this. Now look at that person over there. Look at the person that just did all of this to you. They happy, they go lucky, they going about their business, they doing all the things they want to do. But you the one sitting here stuck. You're the one ruminating over this issue. They done long since dismissed that issue. It's causing you more problems than it's causing that other person any problem at all. I would venture to say it's causing them no problems at all. But you sitting here having a whole issue, having a whole tantrum. Like, so in saying that to myself, I had to acknowledge that, the other part of myself was right. You got a good point. You got a really good point. But we don't think about it that way. We just want to sit in a place of holding grudges and, just going on. Now, sometimes I will say this too. Sometimes people do things deliberately, but there are times where they are not done deliberately. Now, those that do things deliberately, do what you gotta do. Forgive them, but do what you gotta do. If that means cutting them off, dealing with them with a long handled spoon, setting boundaries around your relationship with them, like do all of that. But that does not excuse you from forgiving someone because you don't always know what has gone on with a person, what is currently going on with a person, why that person reacted that way, why that person did what they did, right? You don't know any of those things. And we often just sit from a self perspective, a self-centered perspective, than trying to understand another. And I think that's the biggest place that we get stuck in allowing forgiveness to flow, right? So having come to that revelation of, I'm stuck and they're going on about their business, I had to come also to that place of understanding, well, maybe there's some things going on with that person that I'm not aware of. And in that particular instance, like last week, we talked about mother wounds, right? We don't always know what's going on with someone or what someone has experienced, but we don't give them grace. However, if it was something going on with us and we acted towards someone in a particular way or manner, we would want that forgiveness from another person. We would want that same level of understanding. We would want that same level of grace. But we aren't as quick to give what we want to receive. And I think that's a major problem in what we do. Another issue with forgiveness is the thought that, like, why do I have to apologize? This was my old thought process. Why do I have to apologize when I wasn't the one that was wrong? Like, I was always told, especially as a kid, like, go apologize. And I'm like, what am I apologizing for? Like, I didn't do it. They did it. So why am I apologizing to them? Right? Have you ever had to sit in a place where you were forced or felt as though you had to apologize, or even the person that committed the act flipped that thing on you in a narcissistic manner, and now you feel like you gotta apologize, but then you like, wait, I didn't do anything. So like, why am I apologizing? Because the situation was flipped on you. But also, as an adult, what I realized was sometimes it's okay to apologize. Because just the same way you feel victimized by what that person did, that person may, on some levels, feel victimized by your response to what they did, or just in general, right? We talk about triggers a lot. That person could have been triggered by something that you said or something that you did, and you not realize it. I mean, you could have done it innocently enough, but it happens. And sometimes it's okay, is the point that I'm coming to be the one to apologize. Because ultimately, in any relationship, no matter what the relationship is, romantic, platonic, familiar, no matter what it is, it takes two people to come to a misunderstanding, right? You may have said something, the other person may have done something. Because that person did something, may have caused you to react and do something or say something else. But ultimately, it's two people in a relationship that need to come to an agreement that, okay, somebody's going to have to apologize. And be okay with that. Be okay with owning your part in whatever the breakdown was. Whereas now there's a situation that has presented itself in which an apology needs to be made. Be okay with that. When it's not okay is when, one person's constantly being the one to apologize. Well, that means that somebody else is not putting on their big girl panties, big boy panties, big boy drawers, whatever, and taking accountability, right? Accountability is a big thing in the ingredients of the forgiveness pot or the forgiveness pie, right? Accountability is key. If I can own my stuff, you should be able to own your stuff. And then we come together and resolve whatever the issue is. But without having the communication, without having the ability to take accountability for what you did, didn't do, understood, didn't understand, maybe misunderstood, these things can't happen. Not only that, I will never forget a pastor of ours. He said something one day and it stood out to me, and it's remained with me. In the game of forgiveness, I'm saying it my way. In the game of forgiveness, sometimes you have to forfeit your right to be right. Woo! I'm going to repeat that one more time because it smacked me when I heard it the first time. Sometimes you have to forfeit your right to be right. Because a lot of times that's what it is. We don't want to apologize because we feel as though we are right and we're going to stand on that right no matter what. And I'm not saying that every time you're wrong. Sometimes, yes, you could be wrong. Sometimes, maybe you're not wrong. But again, it's just taking accountability for whatever your portion may have been, whatever the breakdown may have been on your behalf. So I will say, as I come to a close, practically, we want to learn to forgive, because forgiveness, number one, is for us. It's not for the person who has committed the act against us. Number two, you want to give grace because you don't know what may have triggered that person. You don't know what that person is currently going through, and you just may have happened to be the crash test dummy in on the receiving end of whatever it is they're going through. Number three, you have to be okay with taking accountability for whatever your portion or contribution to the breakdown may have been. Number four, forfeit your right to be right. And sometimes you just have to go ahead and suck it up and apologize. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you any less of a person, and it doesn't make you any less right or wrong. So the final scripture is Matthew 18:22. And Jesus answered him and he said, I say unto you, not up to 7 times, but 70 times 7. That is the amount of time that you are to forgive someone else. So remember, evaluate how you operate in the act of forgiving others. Forgiveness is absolutely for you more than it is for someone else. So, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Broken Graciously. Please follow and like the podcast, this episode. Feel free to leave any comments, and I will see you next week.